Kara McKinney, and this is Tipping Point. They did it. They really did. I didn't think they could, but they did. House Republicans impeached DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. It doesn't even matter that Senate Republicans under Mitch McConnell are acting all huffy and puffy about it, and that it's unlikely a Democrat-controlled upper chamber will ever get the 2/3 vote needed to throw Mayorkas out from office on his backside. Because all that matters right now is that House Republicans played hardball, finally, like Democrats. And so Mayorkas will forever be remembered as the first cabinet member to be impeached in nearly 150 years. The DHS may want to argue in its response to the vote that this was a political stunt and that Mayorkas is not guilty of any high crimes and misdemeanors. And while I think the argument falls flat on its face, it's worth pointing out that even if it was merely political, what did they think the impeachments against President Trump were all about? Those were the ultimate epitome of political stunts by political operatives who could never actually prove their case in any real court of law. So what is good for the goose is indeed good for the gander. Democrats better wise up to the fact that Republicans are finally getting some fighting spirit in them. We aren't going to fall for the old trap anymore where we cry impotently. Democrats can't do that. It's unconstitutional, even as they do it anyway. Or this one. Imagine if the situation was reversed. They, the Democrats, wouldn't like it too much. It's not fair. Well, now, like the Cold War era doctrine of MAD, mutually assured destruction, we're finally putting a check on Democrats. They better think twice before shredding up our Constitution any further, because it's the only thing that protects us, and even then, we're saving them from themselves. Wannabe commies only learn the hard way. So getting back to this impeachment vote, it passed narrowly 214 to 213. The same three Republicans opposed the move as last time. However, what allowed the motion to pass yesterday when it failed last week is that House Majority Leader Steve Scalise was able to return from his cancer treatment to cast a vote, tipping the scale in favor of impeaching Mayorkas. And the vote couldn't come at a better time. The New York Post is now reporting, quote, the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, feared for how it tortures its victims, is setting up shop in New York City, police sources revealed to the Post. Gang members recruit migrants from shelters and as they come off buses from Texas, putting them to work in retail theft rings or on mopeds grabbing phones and handbags and roughing up pedestrians. This is organized crime. It's just like the mafia, says Paul DiGiacomo, president of the city's Detectives Endowment Association, end quote. Or what about the fact that the gun woman with male aliases and bearing the cause of Palestine, who was killed over the weekend by off-duty cops while trying to shoot up celebrity pastor Joel Osteen's Texas megachurch, now appears to have been a deportable alien from El Salvador, deportable as recently as the year 2022. And yet, as this exclusive from PJ Media explains, she may have somehow voted in the 2020 election. And over in Massachusetts, where residents are being encouraged to open their homes to illegal immigrants, one woman took that literally. Lisa Hillenbrand tells local news that she loves having illegals from Haiti live with her because they cook and clean for her. It's like we reinvented slavery or indentured servitude. Progress, I guess. Take a look.
Lisa says she feels like she has her own personal chef, as Wildande loves cooking.
It's a delight, and it's really fun having them.
Many are now wondering when this sort of living arrangement might be mandated, especially as all available shelter space to house illegals fills up and yet more keep pouring right in. Joining us now to discuss is military defense attorney Davis Younts. Davis, thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening.
Great. So in some ways, does it seem like we are regressing back to the days of, I guess slavery, but we're rebranding it as progress?
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing with this immigration crisis is that these people that are coming in with no resources, no means, no ability, no plan on how to resettle them by this government. They're just being thrust upon cities. They're being thrust upon communities, and then they do become second-class citizens. And that's one of the things you hear progressives talk about. Oh, they're being treated like second-class citizens because they don't have a legal pathway. That's already happening because there is no plan in place to take care of these people who our administration is encouraging to come in illegally. There is no plan. And of course, this is what happens. Of course, gangs take advantage of these individuals who are living in a shelter. We shouldn't be surprised at all. These are the natural consequences of what's happening.
It really is. And like you said, that was something we heard from progressives over these last few decades is, oh, it's so sad. Illegals, they live in the shadows and they're taken advantage of. And, I don't know, I grew up in Southern California. I knew a lot of people who like to actually boast and brag about being illegal. But, aside from that, it's true, like you said, now that they've compounded the problem to this degree, the very thing they used to pin on us, they've now actually caused in a very real and a very serious way. We could also talk about the human trafficking of the children, of people being forced to do sex work, a lot of women specifically who are told by coyotes and other human traffickers, oh, you pay us some money, we'll get you a job as a waitress in Texas or Arizona or some other state. The woman says, sounds good to me. They get over there and turns out it's a strip club or it's a brothel. And then they're told, if you say anything, we're going to take you right back to where you came from and it's not going to be pretty for you. We also know there's a lot of illegal marijuana farms in California, now apparently even on the East Coast and Maine as well. And a lot of them are also being operated and, the hard manual labor is being done by people who are brought here illegally and then are forced to work on these farms by a lot of organized crime and gangs and the rest. So like you said, it's a very terrible scene that Democrats themselves have actually brought to fruition here. So with all this being said, how great is it to at least see the House impeach Mayorkas?
It is a great start, and it is an appropriate and important moral victory. Regardless of whether or not we talk about the president of the United States policy and what he's responsible for in this, this is the head of the department that is responsible for enforcing our immigration laws, and he refuses to do it. And worse, he has broken the system by allowing the policies that he has, by not even trying to enforce it. You now have a system that's completely broken. So even if someone wants to legally migrate to the United States, it can take 4 years. And that's the average minimum now, according to their own statistics, 4 years to even get an emergency immigration hearing. There are people who are they're being caught at the border and then released under a catch and release program and told their detention and deportation hearing won't even occur until 2030, 6 years out for a non-emergency urgent thing. So his actions in refusing to enforce the law and in refusing to do his job have created a humanitarian crisis as well as a safety crisis for the United States, and it just continues. And quite frankly, he's arrogant in it. So sure, he does the bidding of the White House, but Congress does have the authority to move forward in this. We know the Senate's not going to act, but it is an important step. I would just love to see them get serious about how funding is done. Let's talk about removing his salary if he's not removed from office. Let's talk about the other purse string controls that Congress has to act, and they should be using those things. Absolutely.
I think so as well. And Mayorkas, how often, and this is, one thing that was cited by House Republicans who voted to impeach, is that when he would testify before them, they accused him of lying when he would look at them square in the eyes and say, the border's secure, the border is closed, we have it all under control. Because now the funny part is with Democrats, as you've probably noticed this last news cycle in the last week or two, when they were trying to ram through the border sellout deal, you hear all these Democrat Benny Thompson and Biden and all the rest, they're saying the only reason the border isn't secure is because Republicans won't give us the money that we want. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait a second, you guys, Mayorkas, all of you said the borders are Kamala Harris. All of them have been saying the border's secure, the border is secure, it's closed. They told the migrants don't come because there's nothing for you up here. But again, we all knew that was a lie. And now here they are openly admitting it now because they think it works in their favor to do so. And I think that's the worst aspect, because how do you even debate Democrats on this when they don't even believe oftentimes the argument they're making to you right now, because they just have their ulterior motive that they're trying to get to. And whatever word tricks that they need to use to get to that ultimate goal, they're going to use. So if it behooves them to say the border is secure, they'll say it. When it behooves them not to say it, they'll say the border is not secure, it's Republicans' fault. And it just leaves us in such a quandary. But with this impeachment finally against Mayorkas, just the other week we saw it failed. There were 3 Republicans, I believe it was Buck, Gallagher, and McClintock, I believe, and they sank it. Thankfully, this time Scalise was able to come back and to, get us to secure this victory against Mayorkas. But what does it tell you that, as clear as this is, Republicans almost fumbled the ball on this when we're so close to that end zone?
Yeah, it is bizarre. It's an Orwellian world that we live in when you can't even have a reasonable debate about border security because people will simply lie to your face, like Secretary Mayorkas did to Congress, when it suits their political interest. There's just such a divide on basic fundamental values that creates a problem. And that's why this was important. Again, it's a moral victory. Maybe it doesn't do anything, but at least we're talking about it. At least we're having this conversation in front of the American people where we can say, look, they are lying to you about what's happening on the border for whatever reason. They either do not care about the health and safety of people that are being human trafficked. They don't care about securing our border, protecting our nation from fentanyl for whatever nefarious reason they have for doing that. And they will lie about it for political purposes. So at least this exposes that, and we can have this conversation.
That it does. And let's go back to that story that we touched on earlier, because it's still shocking to me. The one from the New York Post about these press gangs, I guess you can call it, some gangs from Venezuela that are known to be just very cutthroat and very brutal, now operating on our shores. But even more so than just operating here is they're actively recruiting. And like you said, when you have a lot of young fighting age males and they're here in a new country, they don't have any particular allegiance. They don't particularly like the country. They're kind of here for the freebie. They think it's owed to them because America evil and bad and therefore owes them something. I mean, on and on it goes. It's pretty easy to take these guys and to say, hey, here's some easy marks walking down the street. Help us rob them. Help us do X, Y, Z. We had that problem with MS-13, for example. We had young American high schoolers, many of them from Hispanic backgrounds, who would be caught outside of class by MS-13 gang members, and they were trying to force these kids to join the gang. And when these kids would say no, they'd be murdered and their bodies would be dumped. We've seen those murder trials play out. Thankfully now El Salvador seems a lot cleaner and safer than America is, but now I guess it's the Venezuelan press gangs we have to watch out for. But like we're talking about, that is undermining American national security, and that is something Mayorkas and company have directly been involved with and have known about, and they still allowed it to happen. And I think, if anything, that just shows right there why he should have been impeached.
Absolutely. At a fundamental level, the purpose of government is to protect the innocent and to punish evil. And what we are doing by allowing undocumented, unvetted gangs to move in, even with El Salvador cleaning up their own streets, those gangs are going to move into the United States if we don't get a control of our border. And we will see a continued rise, unprecedented rise in New York and other places. And we will see tactics being used by these gangs that they use in third world countries when there is no control, there is no meaningful police force to stop them. And now we even have a situation where these immigrants are boldly attacking police officers in broad daylight. So it shows you there is no fear by these evildoers. So this has to be brought under control. And again, I do think this is a moral victory. At least there are some that are willing to stand up and say, Secretary Mayorkas, you need to do your job.
That he does. And like you said, those illegals who beat up the cops in New York City and then flipped the bird and got out, pretty quickly, no bail, I believe. All of a sudden, they were found all the way in Arizona and California because they were able to just hop on buses and just scoot around this country and just do whatever they wanted to do. Pretty scary, right? That, a guy that you could see walking next to you today could have been across the country yesterday doing all sorts of terror. And who knows what they were doing in their country of origin before even coming here. Again, that's the problem of unvetted mass migration happening. But before I let you go tonight, Davis, I know a few weeks ago we were talking about how there was calls to impeach even the defense secretary. I know they're moving forward right now with impeaching Biden. We heard from this week Hunter Biden's ex-business partner, right, Tony Bobulinski, some of his bombshell exposés and allegations made against the Biden crime family for selling us out. Going back to my main argument, I keep talking about on this show because I think it's so important. The Democrats have gone so off the rails because we don't check them. We talk a lot as Republicans, but we don't do a lot as Republicans. We don't go after the purse strings. We just kind of complain, but keep funding anyway. Do you think now by going forward with impeachments, that shows that Democrats need to really stop and reconsider what they're doing and where they're taking this nation? That's why, like I said, mutually assured destruction, MAD, maybe it'll get them to stop finally, that check and balance on them.
I think it's possible. In many ways, conservatives, Republicans have acted naively, and they've assumed that, simple principles of civility, politeness, kindness, and even just a respect for the truth were made for an even playing field. We know that's not true anymore, so we do have to react to that, both in the political arena, and churches need to understand that as well. Our culture is slipping away from us because there are people that are allowed to just go unchecked, that don't believe in truth, and they don't believe in the principles, biblical principles that made this nation great. So we do have to recognize that, and we do need to be using every legal means in our power to try to enforce the Constitution and enforce the rule of law. And we have to dig in and not continually give up ground. We do need to push back. Absolutely.
That we do. Davis, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. God bless.